Hey guys, today we have the Snoppa Atom 2, which is a 3-axis folding gimbal for your phone. Now, I've had the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 for a while, and I've used it pretty extensively, so I know what I'm looking for out of a gimbal. First and foremost, I'm looking for good stabilization and panning. Secondly, a quick setup process so I can just plop my phone in and be good to go. And lastly, a robust app with good smart tracking. For today's video, I'll be doing a quick unboxing, then show you some of the cool features while I test it out, and lastly, give a review of the product. Timestamps down below, let's get started. Alright, the packaging for this seems a little cheap, kind of like a flimsy cardboard, but I'm willing to overlook that if the product's good. Inside, it looks like we have the instructions first. USB-C charging cable, and here we go. Here is the Atom 2 plus a hand strap. Now, looking at it, I love how small it is. I'm all about portability when it comes to gear, and this I can easily put on the side of my backpack or maybe even in my pocket. Now, the Atom 2 is mostly made out of plastic, but it still feels pretty sturdy in my hand. Coming in at only 280 grams or 0.61 pounds, this feels extremely light in my hands. Now, let's get this set up within the app and start using it. Alright, first let's download the app. Okay, let's hit open. Snoppa would like to use Bluetooth, and press OK, enter the device. It would like to access the camera. It's set allow access to all photos and the microphone. Now, it looks like no device is found, but let's turn this on first and see if something will pop up. There it is. That was actually extremely quick. It's connecting. I believe this is the tutorial. I'm just gonna scroll through this. I believe we're good to go. Now, before we go outside to test it out, I want to show you this really cool auto-folding feature. If you just lift it up like this, it snaps into place and it's pretty much ready to go. If you hold down the power button, it snaps back. Super smooth, convenient, I'm loving it so far. One thing you do have to know is that when it's closing, you don't want to jam your fingers in there because I pinched myself a little bit, but once you learn it the first time, you won't make the same mistake. Now, let's go outside. All right, now that we're outside, let me show you how this thing works. Let's start with the buttons first. Now, there are really only two buttons here. You have the joystick on the left and the record/power button on the right. Now, if I hold down the power button, it turns on the gimbal so that I can actually pan as well as tilt with the joystick. If I double click, it goes to portrait mode, which is really sweet. If I double click again, it goes back to landscape. If I press it once, it turns on the recording. Press it once again, it turns it off. Now, what's also cool about the joystick is that when you click down, you can switch between the different modes. Now, what's also really nice is that it can extend, so it's a little bit longer of a selfie stick, and on the bottom acts as a mini tripod. So you can just plop it right there. Now, you have to be careful because if you tilt it too much, it will actually fall over. So you have to be super careful. Oh, and then it might bug out on you a bit. Now, I also want to show you some of these different modes. So you can click on this button right here, and you can filter between long exposure, panorama, photo, video, time-lapse, hyperlapse, trace, and slow-mo. These modes mostly work pretty well. I say mostly because some of them are still a little buggy. But let's start with long exposure. You can set how long you want the exposure to be with the slider, and this is one of the shots I took at the Bay Bridge. Works fine. The panorama mode, though, is a little buggy, and you have to try multiple times to get a good shot. For example, this is one of the app's stitched panorama shots. It seems to have cut off a whole chunk off the top and bottom of the picture. After a few tries, I was able to get it to look more like the following. Still not the greatest. There are all multiple options for how wide you want your panorama, but I found that 2x2 works best. Now, I'm going to skip to video mode. The gimbal does a pretty good job of keeping the video steady. However, there is a little bit of drifting at times, and if you turn too much, it will lose its horizon. I've seen better stabilization with other more expensive gimbals, but for its price, it does an above average job. For comparison, there's a huge difference between walking with the gimbal and just holding my phone up, as you can see here. The gimbal does a decent job at smoothing out each step and making the turns more fluid. I could see myself using this on trips or for vlogging. It also keeps the phone steady for portrait shots that are facing myself, so it's great if you want to go live or shoot a TikTok. Something that I was really looking forward to testing out was the Atom 2's AI tracking. As you can see, it detects my face and then proceeds to follow me. If I move too fast though, it does lose track, but that's to be expected. Now, if I put the Atom 2 down in tripod mode, it did a really good job at following me, not just with panning horizontally, but also with tilting vertically if I bent down or stood up on my toes. A very limited amount of times it did bug out on me and the gimbal went haywire like it did in this video, but this was far and few in between. With the camera turned around, it also does a decent job at tracking like in this shot where it's following a random person. Another cool feature is beauty mode, where you can smooth out your skin, enlarge your eyes, and play around with different facial features, which is kind of neat. There are also some cool faceovers and filters too. Next up, time-lapse, hyperlapse, and trace. I'm going to be talking about these in tandem. Overall, they work well. You can see with the footage here that each mode works as described. With each one, you can set the interval between shots, as well as the shooting time. The trace mode has an additional feature of swiveling the tripod. You can choose a starting and end angle, and the gimbal will path along taking shots at each specified interval. Lastly, with Slo-mo, you have the option of slowing it down by 4x or 8x. The footage looks fine, but you could have achieved pretty much the same quality with just the iPhone camera app. Alright, those are the big ticket features I wanted to cover. There's some additional small bells and whistles, but for the purpose of keeping this video a reasonable length, I selected the main items. Now let's talk final review. Overall, I'd recommend this gimbal. For one, the price of $70 plus shipping makes it a bit more affordable compared to some of the other gimbals like the ones from DJI. The stabilization is above average, but not the best in the market. However, if you take into account that it's smaller and more compact than a lot of the other gimbals out there, the Atom 2 gets extra points for portability. Now with setup, the folding feature is fluid and fast. I can get my camera up and filming within seconds. Not to mention that the folding motion just looks and feels really cool. The modes mostly work well, with a few bugs here and there, but it seems like these are things Snoppa can fix with patches. The tracking is surprisingly effective and can definitely be used for things like vlogging. Also, I love the fact that the gimbal can extend and has a built-in tripod. I actually have a trip coming up soon, and I'm going to bring this with me to take some footage. Links to purchase are in the description below. Let me know in the comments if you're thinking of getting one, or if you have any questions. If you found this helpful, I'd love if you could subscribe. It would be a great favor to the channel. Other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you for the next review.